Marlene and I are sitting here in the memorial to the Salem witchcraft craze victims. One of the interesting things is there have been many theories on it, some that it was neighbors getting rid of neighbors. Some people say that there was something in the wheat that the girls got hold of, but then why not the whole community? So what happened in Salem is really a question that goes on. But when they came to their 300th anniversary, the city fathers arranged for this memorial, and it's very beautiful. Each plaque is to each one of the victims, and it's right next to the old burial ground. None of the victims are in the burial ground. You did not put a witch with good Christian folk, so no one really knows what happened to all those victims. Hopefully the families went and picked them up. We're heading in towards Halloween, and a lot of people are bringing memorials as in little presents to leave for the various people. This is the stone that's dedicated to Rebecca Nurse, who was an extremely old woman, had spent her entire life being very good. She was originally acquitted, but the girls put up such a fit that they did it over again, and when they went back to review their decision, because the girls were having such a fit, and they accused her again, she was deaf, so she didn't know how to answer the accusation, and then she wound up going to the gallows along with a lot of other people. Now, if you admitted that you were a witch, you weren't executed. It was the people who would not confess to something they did not do who wound up executed. I think I probably would have said that I had done anything if it was going to get me out of being executed. So in their way, they were very, very strong and very, very brave.
What would she have done to make them think that she was a witch? Medicine?
They say that no. In this particular case, neighbors would claim that somebody cursed them, they gave them the evil eye. She was angry with me and she looked at me and then my cow died, or my child became sick. They were using totally really ridiculous things to claim. And the worst thing that they did was they admitted something called spectral evidence, which meant that even if the witch was chained up in the jail, they could claim that her spirit was free and the spirit came out and tortured them at night. And that stood up as evidence in their courts at the time. So it was really a very sad piece of American history, but compared to what was going on in Europe, it was mild. When you think that thousands and thousands were executed in one day in various parts of Germany. No witch was ever burned in the United States. Witches weren't burned in England either. You were only burned in England if you were a heretic. Scotland did like to burn witches, not because they wanted it to be particularly cruel, but their belief was that if you were burnt, you were then brought down to cinder and nothing, and therefore you were no longer evil, capable of doing evil to others, and that's why you were burnt. Quite often they would strangle people before they burned them.
So the whole idea of what you see on TV and movies of them burning witches didn't...
Well, it did. Like I said, it did happen in Scotland. It did happen on the
but not
continent.
here.
We did not burn witches in the United States or the colonies. It was not the only case of people executed for witchcraft. There were some cases in Connecticut. There have been a few other cases in Boston. But it was the only time where it turned into a frenzy. Not just the people who were executed, but there were literally hundreds of people in jails. And you had to pay for jail at that time. So if you were unable to pay for your jail fine, you just rotted there until somebody found a way to pay the jail for your room and board for the time that you were in it. And many people went on to die in jail, even though they never went to trial and were convicted.
When did you start your interest in witches and ghostly stories and that kind of thing?
The witchcraft was something I became interested in because I spent a lot of time up in Massachusetts because of my husband's relatives, and so we just wound up in Salem, and I just, it really is heartbreaking. And my husband went, and when he came back from a trip one time, he had purchased a set of the trial records. So I had the original trial records to start reading, and I had done a book many, many years ago, based on the Salem witch trials. And I am working on one that will be coming out next year in November which takes in a lot of what is happening in this area right here, in the cemetery, the past. Beyond the witches, Salem has an incredible history. Nathaniel Hawthorne, they said, actually created Salem as we know it because we see it through his eyes. The way he spoke about his family, the House of the Seven Gables, where we'll be tonight for our seance. He really created what lies in the mind of most Americans. And it did have quite another piece of history going with it too, like everywhere else. History is layer upon layer of things that happened different decades. And now it's a completely different kind of witch town. There is a Wiccan population here of over 2,000. And the city has people in it who are into the Wiccan movement, people who are totally against the Wiccan movement, people who love to open up schlocky Halloween haunted houses. No matter how you look at it, Halloween, the entire month of October and even into November is huge for Salem. This is the stone within this, now it's preserved, but this is the stone that goes to Judge Hathorne, or Hawthorne, however you pronounce it. You'll notice there is a change in the name. It was spelled Hathorne. At that time, Nathaniel Hawthorne put the W in his name to give him a little bit of distance from his family and everything that had happened. He never apologized for his part in any of it, and he never admitted any wrong. Even the number of the other judges, even though not, making a massive confession like I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done this, many of them put in that although there was no malice intended and they really felt they were acting for God, many of the judges believed that they had misread God's signals to them and that many innocents died because of it. So a lot of people made admission, but not him. Well, the seance actually came about being because of a case I heard of that didn't happen in Florida. A man was killed and assumed to have been the murderer of several people. However, it later came to pass that he wasn't, and of course there was no rectifying anything for him because he had been dead for quite some time. So that brought about the concept of the mystery which is going on in the book. And also a lot of things that have happened in Florida. We of course have some great stories that have to do with Florida. Like every other state in the Union, it's got some great ghost stories, especially when you get up into the middle of the state or into St. Augustine, but up in the area up there. But I don't think it matters where you go, you're going to get some good ghost stories. And so I am here tonight in Salem, Massachusetts at the House of the Seven Gables because the Mira folk and I thought that since this was called the Seance, we ought to have a seance. And I'm delighted to say that we've come up with a really extraordinary place to have it because, of course, the House of the Seven Gables was written by Nathaniel Hawthorne. And in Salem, one of his ancestors was one of the judges who condemned the witches to hang during the witch hysteria of 1692 here. It certainly had a huge influence on him throughout his life, and it's really a wonderful place to be because we're absolutely seeped in history, and it's wonderful to go through the ages and see what was good, what was bad, and learn from all the things that happened in the past. It's beautiful, it's got atmosphere, and we're totally delighted to be here, and we're looking forward to what happens tonight when we go in for our own seance.